Lagos has a way of making you feel small when you don't have money. It doesn't shout at you. It doesn't insult you directly. It simply shows you what you don't have every single day. Kemi and Rita lived in a one-room apartment on the mainland, the kind of place you don't notice unless you've lived in one before. From the outside, it looked like every other building on the streets: faded paints, rusted iron gates, and a narrow corridor that smelled of damp walls and yesterday's cooking oil. Nothing about it screamed poverty, but nothing about it whispered comfort either. Inside the room, space was a luxury they did not have. One bed pushed against the wall, a tin mattress that has lost its original shape from years of turning and adjusting. A small table sat in a corner, cluttered with old notebooks, half-used cream, tangled chargers, and receipts they kept meaning to throw away. Their clothes hung on nails driven into the wall because there was no wardrobe, just neatly arranged survivor. Kemi and Rita had known each other long before they became roommates. They met during a time when life still felt hopeful, when dreams sounded possible, and Lagos had not yet taught them its harsh language. They bonded over shared struggles, shared jokes, and shared faith that things would eventually work out. When money was tight, they leaned on each other. When one felt weak, the other tried to be strong. They were both from average homes, the kind where parents tried their best but never had excess. Homes where school fees were paid with planning and sacrifice, not ease. Homes where children were taught that success came through education, patience, and prayer. Their parents believed deeply in God's time, that phrase that carried both comfort and frustration. Just be patient, their parents used to say. Your time will come, and work doesn't fail. Kemi believed those words with her whole heart. She held onto them like a lifeline, repeated them silently whenever life felt too heavy. Rita believed them too, at least in the beginning. But as years passed and life in Lagos grew louder and more demanding, those words started to feel like excuses instead of promises. Every morning, Kemi woke up before her alarm rang, not because she was eager to start the day, but because her body had learned the rhythm of survival. The noise of Lagos crept into the room before the sun fully rose. Distance on, early morning prayers, footsteps in the corridor. She would open her eyes slowly, stare at the ceiling fan above her, and take a quiet breath before getting up. Kemi prepared for work the same way every day, carefully, deliberately, as if consistency itself was her sheet. She ironed her clothes neatly, even though they were old. She packed her bag with precision, lunch in one corner, notebook in another, because all that made her feel in control of a life that offered very little of it. Her job paid just enough to keep her afloat. Transport fare, food, a share of the rent, that was it. No savings worth mentioning, no spontaneous spending, no room for mistake. Every naira had a purpose before it even entered her hands. By the end of each month, her account balance always told the same story: survival, not growth. Rita hated predictability with a passion that scared even her sometimes. She hated knowing that no matter how hard she tried, her day would end the same way it always did, with sore feet, little money, and a heavy heart. She hated planning her life around limitations. She hated counting transport fares before leaving the house. She hated watching life pass her by. Hope for Rita had started to feel like a delayed promise. While Kemi found peace in routine, Rita felt trapped by it. To her, predictability was proof that nothing was changing. Every repeated day felt like a silent insult, a reminder that effort did not always guarantee progress. She would lie on the bed after Kemi left for work, staring at her phone, scrolling endlessly, watching other people live lives that looked lighter, easier, fuller. People her age or younger, who seemed to have skipped the suffering stage entirely, and with each swipe, her frustration grew. Rita wasn't lazy. She was tired. Tired of waiting, tired of hoping, tired of doing everything right, and still ending up in the same place. Where Kemi saw safety, Rita saw stagnation. Where Kemi believed patience would be rewarded, Rita feared it was quietly wasting her life away. And in that difference, small at first, barely noticeable, something began to shift. Not loudly, not suddenly, but deeply enough to change the direction of everything that would come next. Every night after the noise of the day finally settled and the room grew quiet, Rita lay on her bed, phone glowing in the dark. The ceiling fan still complained above her head, pushing warm air around the room, but she barely noticed it anymore. Her attention was fixed on the screen in her hand. Instagram had become her escape. With every swipe, she entered another version of Lagos, one that did not look like us at all. Lagos girls with soft voices and even softer lives. Girls who spoke slowly, confidently, as if life had never rushed them or cornered them. Their hair was always perfectly laid, long and expensive looking, swinging effortlessly as they walk into restaurants. Hotel rooms with white sheets and large windows, capture filled with words like self-care, soft life, God did, and living my best life. Places Vita could not pronounce properly, let alone imagine herself visiting. Dubai, Maldives. Sometimes she whispered the names out loud, tasted them slowly, wondering what it would feel like to exist in those spaces. She stared at those pictures longer than she should have. At first, it was admiration, genuine and harmless. She told herself she was happy for them, that their success inspired her, that one day she too would post pictures like that. Then admiration quietly turned into curiosity. She began studying their lives more closely, zooming in on details, counting how often they travel, noticing how quickly their lives seemed to upgrade. She paid attention to the men who appeared occasionally in the background. Expensive watches, strong hands, luxury cars parked just out of frame. And then curiosity became anger, a slow, burning anger she didn't know what to do with. Questions began forming in her mind, questions that had no safe answers, questions she couldn't ask anyone out loud without sounding bitter or ungrateful. Why them and not me? Are they smarter than I am? Did they work harder than I did? Or did they simply choose a path I'm too scared to take? Those questions followed her into sleep and greeted her when she woke up. They sat quietly in her chest during the day, growing heavier with each passing hour. Kemi noticed the change before Rita said anything. Rita became quieter during the day, her energy dimmed. The girl who used to laugh out loudly at small jokes now smiled half-heartedly. At night, instead of sleeping, she tossed and turned, sighing deeply, scrolling endlessly, as if her phone held answers her real life refused to give her. She complained more, not dramatically, but consistently. I didn't come to Lagos to suffer like this, she would say, staring at the ceiling. I'm tired of managing. Life shouldn't be this hard. Kemi listened patiently, the way friends do when they don't know how to fix things. She tried to ground Rita with words that had grounded her for years. Everybody's journey is different, Kemi would say gently. This city tests people differently. What's yours will come. But Rita didn't want test anymore. One evening, after a day that felt longer than it should have, everything changed. It was in that moment when hunger, heat, and frustration meant that Rita finally spoke the thought she had been carrying for weeks. What if we are doing life the hard way on purpose? Her voice was calm, almost casual, but the question landed heavily in the room. Kemi laughed at first, a short, tired laugh. She thought it was one of Rita's dramatic statements, the kind that came and went with bad days. She shook her head, still staring at the wall. But when she looked at Rita's face, the laughter died in her throat. Rita wasn't smiling. Her eyes were steady, focused, like someone who had already made a decision and was just waiting for confirmation. Let's go to the club, Rita said quietly. Island clubs, that's where rich men are. The words hung in the air. Kemi's heart skipped, not because she was shocked, but because she had felt this conversation coming for a long time. Club for what? She asked, even though the answer had already formed in her mind. To meet men. Rita replied simply, no apology, no hesitation, men that can change our story. Kemi shook her head immediately, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. That life is dangerous, she said. Not everything that shines is safe. Rita sighed, frustration spilling over. Fear has kept you poor, she said. That night, Rita didn't wait for permission. She stood up and started getting dressed. Heart racing with fear and excitement in equal measure, Kemi watched from the bed. There was a strange heaviness in her chest. She wanted to stop her. She wanted to say something strong enough to pull her back, but no words came. All she managed was, "Please be careful." Rita smiled, a quick smile, a brave smile, the kind people wear when they are stepping into the unknown. The club was everything Rita imagined and more. Loud music, blinding lights, bottles popping, women dressed like money itself. For a moment, she felt painfully out of place, like a visitor in a world she wasn't meant to enter. She stood awkwardly, unsure of herself, questioning her decision. Then a man noticed her. He didn't shout, didn't flash cash, didn't grab her arm or talk over. He was calm, well-spoken. His confidence was quiet, controlled, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. His name was Dare. He bought her a drink and asked simple questions: where she was from, what she liked, what she wanted out of life. He listened, not like someone hunting, but like someone interested. That night didn't end the way Rita imagined, but it marked the beginning of a life she never planned for. And somewhere back on the mainland, Kemi lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unaware that their lives had already started moving in different directions. Weeks later, Rita's life had changed so gradually that at first, it was easy to miss. It wasn't one dramatic moment or sudden announcement. It began with small things, subtle things, things that only someone living closely with her would notice. She started coming home with extra groceries, not the usual noodles and bread, but real food. Rice in larger bags, chicken instead of eggs, new clothes that still smell like the store. Cash casually dropped on the table like it was nothing. Rita stopped complaining. That alone was shocking. The girl who used to count transport fare out loud, who sighed constantly and cursed Lagos under her breath, now moved through the room with ease. She hummed while dressing. She smelled at nothing. She slept better. Kemi noticed the change before Rita ever spoke about it. She noticed how Rita no longer rushed to lie down after work, how she took her time fixing her hair, how she laughed louder on phone calls but kept her voice low when asked questions. She noticed how Rita's shoulders no longer carried the same weight. When Rita finally told Kemi the truth, she did it carefully. They were sitting on the bed, the fan humming above them, the room unusually calm. "He is married," Rita said softly, not meeting Kemi's eyes at first. "But he respects me, he helps me, and I'm not suffering anymore." She waited as if expecting anger or disappointment. Kemi didn't judge her. She didn't shout. She didn't preach. She didn't condemn her friend. Instead, she nodded slowly, listening, trying to understand. But fear sat quietly in her heart. It wasn't fear of Rita. It was fear of the road she had chosen. At first, Kemi told herself she was fine. She reminded herself that her values were intact, that her path was different. But every day, Rita's life continued to improve. And every day, Kemi's remained exactly the same. Rita dressed better. Rita ate better. Rita lived better. Kemi watched from the sidelines, smiling for her friend while quietly questioning everything she believed. Was patience really a virtue, or just a story poor people told themselves? Was she being disciplined, or just afraid? Was she principled, or simply stuck? She told herself she was strong, until one night she wasn't. They were getting ready for bed. When Kemi finally spoke, her voice hesitant, almost embarrassed. "Next time you are going out," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "Take me with you." Rita looked at her, surprised at first. Then she smiled, a knowing smile. And just like that, the line Kemi had spent years protecting quietly disappeared. The club welcomed Kemi differently. It wasn't loud excitement the way it had been for Rita. For Kemi, it was quieter, heavier, like the room was watching her as much as she was watching it. She stood close to Rita at first, unsure of where to place her hands, unsure of how to move her body in a space that felt too bold for her spirit. Kemi was quiet, observant, innocent in a way that did not look weak, but unfamiliar. And in a room like that, unfamiliar innocence attracts the wrong kind of attention. And that made her stand out more than she realized. That was when she met him. He didn't approach her immediately. He watched first. When he finally did, his presence shifted the hair around her. He called himself Blackie. He was younger than Rita's man, louder, flashier, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. His clothes were expensive. Money followed him everywhere. He spent it carelessly, recklessly, like it meant nothing. Bottles appeared without discussion. Cash exchanged hands without counting. Kemi had never seen anything like it. She felt chosen. Out of all the women in the room, he picked her, sat close to her, spoke directly to her, asked her questions like her answers mattered. She didn't know that sometimes the devil chooses to. At first, everything felt like a dream. Money came easily. Gifts followed quickly. It made her feel like she had been struggling unnecessarily all this time. After all the patience, after all the discipline, after all the times she chose the safe route. But slowly, the dream began to sweat. It started with small things. Blackie never shared details about his life. When she asked questions, he laughed them off or changed the subject. He never mentioned family, never talked about work in clear terms. Everything was always vague. They never went to the same place twice. Public places made him uncomfortable. He preferred private locations, quiet corners, houses that didn't feel lived in. Each time, Kemi told herself it was just his personality, that rich men were different, that privacy came with wealth. But something always felt off. His phone calls were strange, short and coded. Sometimes his mood changed without warning. One moment affectionate, the next distant. Kemi began to feel like she was walking on something unstable, like ice that had not cracked yet, but might at any time. She ignored the feeling, because ignoring fear is easier when comfort is involved. Then came the night that broke everything. The night when Blackie suggested a trip, not a public one, not somewhere bright and familiar, somewhere quiet, somewhere private, somewhere she did not recognize. He promised her more money than she had ever heard at once. As they drove further from the city lights, Kemi's heart began to race for some reasons she couldn't explain. Lagos faded behind them. The silence grew louder. That was when instinct finally found its voice, and by that time she understood what she had walked into. The house was too quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that presses against your ears and makes your heart beat louder than it should. There was no music, no laughter, no casual movements. It was colder than it should have been, carrying a sharp, unfamiliar smell that didn't belong in any place meant for comfort. Then she heard the whisper, low voices, intentional, conversations she wasn't meant to hear. She stood still, barely breathing, fresh, clean, ready. Each word landed slowly, sinking deep before she fully understood their meaning. That was when fear introduced itself properly. In that moment, the truth revealed itself without mercy. This man did not just spend money. He made it in the darkest way possible. And she was not his girlfriend, not his companion, not his choice. She was inventory. She ran barefoot into the night. Her feet hit gravel and concrete. Pain shooting through her legs. But she didn't stop. She didn't look back. Her breath turned out of her chest in sharp, desperate gasp as fear carried her farther than strength ever could. She ran carrying nothing, no bag, no phone, no luxury, only trauma. By the time help found her, she was shaking, crying, unable to explain everything at once. Her body survived, but her mind replayed the night in fragments. Whisper, silence, cold hair, fear. She survived. Rita heard about it, and that night became their end of fantasy. They returned to their old life, but not the same people. Rita learned that a path worked for her, but it was not universal. Kemi learned that shortcuts sometimes lead straight into graves. Lagos didn't apologize. It never does, but the lesson was clear. Not every road that leads to soft life is meant for you. Some paths favor some people and destroy others.